Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Everyman's Arsenal, a podcast where we arm our viewers and listeners with knowledge coming from your favorite influencers, business owners, or just interesting people. And today we got an interesting one. We had CCW 22LR, who I don't know, famously or infamously won on the Wheel of Disappointment for an opportunity to come on and for me to interview him. And so let's roll this intro and we'll get them in here and start grilling them. Well, I don't know if it played for anyone else, but that was kind of disappointing. What's up, CCW? Welcome to the show.
What is up? I am just happy to be here, man. The Wheel of Disappointment was the most exciting thing that has happened to me in months.
That's kind of sad. The rest of the viewers know that the Wheel of Disappointment it can sometimes giveth, but mostly it taketh. So I'm curious. You know, we talked a little bit beforehand in the green room is what I call it. But how did you hear about Thin Line Defense and kind of what brought you to our channel?
Yeah, man, you guys are awesome. So I have had the honor and privilege of working with both Cody and Joe during my career, and Cody actually got me into it. I'm currently kind of in his AOR, and so he mentioned it, and I was like, I'm gonna check that out. And my girlfriend actually just headed out to a university out of state, so my evenings are free for binging YouTube, and had a couple of your guys' live sessions pop up, and kind of got sucked in just a couple weeks ago. So I couldn't believe when I won. I was like, man, I'm just this like random guy to these dudes.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome that you mentioned it, that, you know, we've had some instances, if you've only been following our live chats for, you know, a month or so, some of our older ones, it's interesting because we used to be so random and not have any structure, and someone would chime in and I was always like 20 minutes behind on the comments. So I'd get to this comment and you know, something like, "Hey, what's up with these guys wearing masks? This is weird." And so we would address it, but then usually it was like, "Oh, they're probably not here anymore." And then they would chime in immediately like, "No, no, no, I'm still here. This is like super interesting because, dude, we used to be random to the point that you would tune into a live chat and we're talking about cars or we're talking about all sorts of stuff, man. So we try
Yeah,
to be a little bit more structured now, and I think that's been beneficial. Our viewers can see the crazy, you know, the first and last 10 minutes, but a little bit more structure during the meantime. So
I
glad to
like it,
have
man.
you.
Yeah, like I started watching. I think I've watched only your last three or four. But to me, I mean, just some dude sitting in his basement drinking beer and watching TV. Like I kind of like that element of y'all trying to stay on task,
Yeah.
and but you still address your viewers, which is really cool. So
Well, and it's interesting
it kind
too.
of fills the social meter too,
Yeah.
by just getting to sit there and watch.
Well, I was going to say, like, especially if you know Joe, trying to keep
Yeah.
Joe aligned to a certain task is practically impossible. Um, so I'll tell our viewers or our listeners, like, CCW and I we didn't really talk about like what questions. I
Yeah.
didn't send him a list of questions to ask. So I am I have been focused on this Reading. Is that a T7? This
Yeah,
press
it's the
behind me?
T7 turret press. It's actually only my second press, but I've been reloading for like 15 years. Um, God, is that right? No, not quite that long. Maybe like 10 years. But I don't know if you can see. My garage is still kind of a mess, even though I was bragging about cleaning it. I've got a Lee turret press there, which I
Oh,
started out
nice.
on, and dude, there's nothing wrong with it. I won a certificate for the off Reading, and you could
Okay.
buy as much as you wanted. So I bought the T7 and a bunch of dies and stuff. But there's nothing wrong with the good old Lee Challenger. I use that thing forever.
Yeah, that's what I still have for my single stage press. That's one thing we did talk about beforehand that I've been reloading maybe, gosh, I would say 6 or 7 years. And I started off. I had a Lee C press, the old Lee C press, that I mounted to a block of wood, and I had some Harbor Freight clamps that I would C clamp it to my desk when I wanted to reload. And it was when I was bored, I would deep prime, like 50 rounds, and then I'd have a
Yeah.
bag that my deep primed ammo would go into, and it was just okay. The bag's full now. I'll prime all of them, and that's kind of how I
Yeah.
reload just when I had time and
Yeah, I
patience.
tried the progressive thing for a little while, but I kind of went back to that routine like you were talking about, where it's like, you know what? Let me just do one little step at a time. I
Mhm.
shoot all precision rifle stuff. I'm not out there mag dumping, so for me, loading up 200 rounds is plenty. Like that's 1.5 range sessions. So I
Oh
can
wow,
go and do one little step at a time, and then just let it sit until next time I feel like reloading. And if I'm shooting like one match a month, and then maybe going to do one training session at the range a month, that's plenty of ammo. And yeah, it's pretty fun. Like I'm kind of a wannabe engineer. Like I tried engineering classes and immediately realized that I was not going to graduate college if I stuck with engineering. So this is how I kind of scratched my engineering itch, and I really enjoyed it. It's so much fun, kind of chasing that tightest group you can shoot, and
yeah,
playing around with all the different calibers and bullets and everything. It ain't cheap though, man. It's not,
yeah,
and it's not getting better anytime soon.
yeah. Well, and for me, like I just bought I think it was 7,000 primers. And people listening to that, if they're not into reloading, are like, holy cow, 7,000. But
Like a
I
thousand bucks.
yeah, I mean, it was a lot of money. And
Yeah,
you know, I'd say four-ish years ago, 7,000 rounds would have been maybe $300, including your hazmat fee and shipping.
yeah,
That's probably accurate. Yeah, like 300 bucks. So but I just been holding out, like praying maybe next week prices are going to come down, and slowly dwindling my stockpile that I had, and I finally just had to bite the bullet, and I figured, okay, if I'm going to order enough to make the hazmat fee worth it. Um, so hopefully this seven, knowing my luck, come January prices are going to go back down to like $35 per thousand. I'm going to be kicking myself, but I don't see
no,
that happening soon.
I think now's the time to buy, to be honest, because it's always going to be crazy around election season, and everybody's going to be buying everything up, and it's just going to be nuts. And it's not fun when you're like, if that's your main hobby and that's what you do to, relieve stress and get out and, shoot some matches with your buddies. And all of a sudden it's like, man, I don't want to shoot up the last of my primers or powder
Yeah.
or whatever. Like that's a big bummer. At least it
Yeah.
was for me a couple of years ago when I was in that boat. Cause, I just hadn't piled them deep like they always talk about. And I sure have since then.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned prior to us starting, you had mentioned that you're pretty active in PRS, and I told you I didn't know what that was. So precision
Yeah.
shooting, is that PRS?
Yeah, so PRS is the Precision Rifle Series, and I don't shoot like at a professional level or anything like that, but I really enjoy the local matches. And so, just to kind of summarize it real quick off the cuff, a typical PRS match is shot with 10 stages. Each stage is on average 10 shots per stage, and it goes usually from about 300 yards to 1,200 yards, and you're shooting. I'd say 85% of the field is shooting some kind of 6 millimeter. I shoot a 6x47 Lapua. There's a bunch out there. They're all really close to the same thing. Six Creedmoor is really popular, but anyways, you're on the clock, usually 90 seconds per stage, and you get 10 shots, and they have you shoot from all kinds of crazy positions. And so it's not like a F class match where, you've got your rifle strapped into a rest and you're using a little joystick to get everything dialed in just right. Like you're on the clock, you're constantly fighting your wiggle zone, sitting there in kind of an uncomfortable situation or uncomfortable position rather, and trying to get those accurate shots off. And um, before I lived here, I lived in Missouri, and they had a really good local PRS series, and it was super competitive. Like these dudes were insane, and I just got a battery low warning on my earbud, so I might
Okay.
have to switch that out just in case you lose audio from me. I'll figure it out then. But so, anyways, yeah, I got really sucked into it when I lived in Missouri. Just a bunch of really fun dudes to hang out with for an all day match. Um, I had shot three gun previously, and I got kind of burnt out on the whole like, okay, everybody watches one guy shoot, and then you all go paste targets and
Right.
wait for all the targets to get reset. And with PRS, there's no resetting targets. There's steel targets out there, and you either hit them or you don't, and your 90 seconds is up, and then it's the next guy. So there's still a
Interesting.
little bit of waiting around, but not like, I guess I'm just kind of impatient person. It's not like
Yeah.
IDPA and IPSC and three gun and all those where it's just nothing but paste and targets for 90% of your day.
So when you say you have 90 seconds per stage, do you have to get, is the goal to get all 10 rounds on target, or do you just have to hit it once with those 10 rounds?
Yeah, so it could be 10 different targets. It could
Oh,
be,
okay.
five targets and you got to hit each one twice. They'll have, a lot of times they'll have, let's say three targets and three positions. And so you got to shoot the three targets from the first position and then move to the second position and shoot the same three targets again, and then move to the third position and shoot the same three targets. So, but the competition is usually like the guys that are winning are shooting, nines and tens on every stage. Like
Okay.
they can think back on their day and tell you exactly which ones they missed. That's how
Wow.
infrequently they're missing. It's pretty impressive, and I am not on that level, but it sure is fun to try.
Now, is this bolt action guns or gas guns?
Yeah, bolt action. I've been one that so PRS has really taken off in popularity, and there have been a few more gas gun matches popping up here and there. I was supposed to shoot one a couple weeks ago, but freaking wrecked my mountain bike and was not in shape to go, you know, move big heavy gun around. So I haven't done any long range precision gas gun matches, with the exception of one down in it's a competition dynamics match called Team Safari down in I think it was Logan, New Mexico.
Okay.
And that's a cool one because it's a guy shooting a bolt gun and a guy with a gas gun. And you have unknown targets, unknown distances, and a much longer time limit. But they're basically like ready, set, go. And then you have to engage all the targets with the gas gun first, and then the bolt gun guy shoots. So that was pretty fun. And I uh, shot that with my buddy, and I was shooting the gas gun. I had a 224 Valkyrie at the time, and it did really well, but that gun frustrated the hell out of me. I'm looking forward to trying something different for my next alternative cartridge, but I've been having a lot of fun with just my good old 18-inch heavy barrel 223 AR,
Okay.
and been shooting the crap out of that. So,
Have you Joe did a series, I think it was titled 224 Valkyrie, the King of Inconsistencies, where he'd swap it out with a 6 millimeter arc.
okay, yeah.
And
I haven't seen that video, but I love the title because that's kind of been my experience as well. I really wanted to shoot the 88 grain ELDMs, and I still have a shit ton of them.
yeah.
Uh, and I just couldn't get them to shoot well at a reasonable speed.
Mhm.
Um, Down around like 2,500 feet per second is where I settled, and even then it was like three-quarter MOA. Um, and really, like, to get all the advantages out of that cartridge, you should be shooting those a little bit heavy, a little bit hotter than that. So
Yeah.
I want to try the 22 arc, but I've got so many other projects, like project guns that I'm working on right now, and I need to like take a step back and and reevaluate what I'm spending my money on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I got it. The one oddball. I mean, I have like 50 Beowulf, and I have a 6 millimeter arc, but the one really oddball caliber that I shoot is Wildcat round 6 millimeter by 223. So it's a
Oh,
223
cool.
parent case necked up to a 6 millimeter, and lighter, obviously lighter bullets. So that's been a fun one to really try to mess around with. It's a 14 and a half inch barrel. I honestly, I saw it was on clearance on this. I forgot the website, some website, but Black Hole Weaponry, I think, is the barrel manufacturer.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
heard of
so,
them.
something like that. Um, but it was, clearance from like $300 to $60, and I thought, oh, I have reloading stuff. Like I should be able to figure this out. And it's been really fun, like having that. But what you talked about, like the frustration of, well, not frustration, sorry, the feeling of like I have the ability to find kind of the perfect round, the perfect combination of powder, bullet weight for this gun, and the scientific experiments you work through to figure that out. Super entertaining when you get it, and it's just like
Yeah,
so thrilling when you finally nail it.
yeah, for sure. And that's a good point because I've got some guns like my PRS match rifle. Like I've got my load for that I just stick to, and I'll shoot it until it shows me it doesn't like it anymore. You know, like the barrel's getting burned out or something. And
Yeah,
I don't. Once I get that set and I get it around half MOA, I just don't mess with it anymore because I want it to be consistent match to match. But then
yeah,
I've got another gun like right now I've got a 223 Ackley. It's a hollow bolt action, kind of a cheap action, and I had a custom barrel spun up for it with 223 Ackley improved cartridge. So that's been like a fun project. And it's funny we were talking about those 88 grain ELDM bullets. Well, I'm trying to make those shoot it, and it's like one of those things where it's like not really made for that, but I'm making it work. You know, I'm
right.
making it my own thing. It's fun. Like those little bullets, man. They hit hard. Like you can definitely
Yeah,
tell the difference between 88 and a 77.
yeah. Well, I get you, man. It's funny because I feel like I don't know if you experience this, but my experience as a reloader, I'd say it's still kind of fresh in the hobby. It's um I kind of go off of, I'm still a deal shopper. So there was a guy local to me. This was before, again, before prices got crazy. He was selling 2 8-pound jugs of H335. And
Yeah,
so I didn't even know if I had anything that would use. I'm like, but it was $200 for 16 pounds of H335. So I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna buy that. Now I have, I still probably have like 14 pounds, and I'm constantly finding stuff like, oh, there's a 308 load that I can try with H335 that uses 110 grain, Barnes bullets screaming out of that barrel. I think velocity was over 3,000. Um, or it'll work for 6.5 Grendel, and just the only reason I bought it wasn't because I had all these things like, oh, this is a great deal. Now I have to find stuff that I can use this in.
yeah.
So I kind of understand what you're saying when it comes to 223 Ackley, but that's a caliber I've never heard of before. So what is that? What's the
Um,
parent cartridge for
can
that?
can we show ammo on video?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
this is not, it's not a live chat. I mean, we could, this is all going to get
So
shown.
basically, it's
And I love these little, what are these little pouches that you have?
yeah. So they're on Amazon just as tool pouches, and they
Okay.
come in like packs with all these different colors. And since most of the time when I shoot, like I'm going to a match or I'm loading up a bunch of shit and driving, you know, and having a multi-day trip. So when you've got these kinds of ammo boxes,
Yep.
they just
That's
take
what
up
I'm
a
used
lot of
to.
extra room.
Yeah.
And it was actually my buddy I shot that Team Safari match with that had those exact pouches.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that's a great idea. And, that dude's actually an engineer, a real engineer. I don't want to be like me. And he's got some experience working in some with at a bullet company, and he's like,
Okay.
yeah, that whole like, oh, you gotta like put your
Yeah.
your bullets in a box to protect them so that they don't run into each other and get all, get pushed back in. Like, as long as you're doing everything right, like you don't really have to worry about that. At
Well,
least
that's good
that's
to
what they
know.
taught me. So
Yeah.
I've been doing that. I really like it. You can just pile them in. So 223 Acme improved. Let's see. Whoops, I just stepped on a little stand here.
Hey, it's fine.
So the shorter one there is a normal 223,
Oh,
and you kind
okay.
of see the 223 Acme has got a shoulder that's
Yeah, the
blown out.
shoulder's a lot sharper.
Yeah, so that's anytime you hear Acme improve, it's talking about blowing that shoulder out. I think to 40
Oh,
degrees.
okay.
Somebody I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong on that. But usually anything
Hmm.
Acme improved, a really popular one is the 243 Acme, which is a great cartridge.
Okay.
And so you can imagine, like that. You think of the 243, it's based on the 308,
Yeah.
and so it's got that same shoulder angle, which is kind of shallow. Um, but with Acme improved, you blow it forward, and
Okay.
now you don't have to trim as often. It holds more powder. Um,
Oh, wow.
some people say it's inherently more accurate. Um, it can be kind of a pain in the butt if you got to fire form your cases. Um,
Yeah.
I think Six Dasher is the only one that's technically like Ackley improved, where you can buy cases that are already fire formed, or
Hmm.
I shouldn't say that, they're not fire formed. Buy cases that are already in the correct shape.
Okay.
So it's kind of
So,
fun. You can. It's just another one of those things where you can get real nitpicky with it and really customize it to whatever you're trying to do. But how cool is that though? That freaking 88 grain bullet in there. Look how long that thing is.
yeah, no.
Yeah, that will not fit in an AR magazine. I can tell you that.
No, no way. So, again, this is the Ackley stuff is bolt action only. They're not going to be making magazines for that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, for gas guns, I
So
mean.
it just kind of comes down to how much room do you have to work with. I'll guess that there's probably some AR-10s out there that you can shoot a 243 Ackley in with the right length bullet and seat
Yeah.
it at the right length. It just kind of comes down to how long the magazine is. Now, in an auto loader, you may want that shoulder to have not as steep of an angle for reliability purposes, because you can imagine where if you get a bunch of
Yeah.
carbon buildup and stuff and you're working with
Yeah.
a shoulder that's that steep, now you've got not as forgiving of uh, angles to work with when you're trying to jam that bullet in there. And good old, if it seats, it eats.
Right. So one of the things that you mentioned, I was thinking our viewers or listeners might not know what that is. When you said fire forming your cartridge or your brass, what's your process of fire forming your brass? So let's take can you take 223 Remington brass and fire form it to 223 Ackley?
Yes, yeah, and
And
that's really the only way to make 223 active brass. So you got to start with 223 Remington, and then when you shoot it, you can imagine, that pressure is blowing that shoulder forward,
mhm,
and it's just filling in the shape of the chamber. So when you say fire forming, really that's all you're doing is you're shooting it in the chamber that you're going to be using, and when you're trying to get real nitpicky with it, that's advantageous because now you've got less wiggle room in there, literally,
right.
um, and that brass is forming it. And then when it comes to reloading, one of the steps is to resize the brass. And so after you've fire formed it, well, you resize it just enough for it to reliably fit in the chamber. So that
Okay.
way, when you're closing the bolt on it, you're not having to fight against anything. And then on the other end of things, you're not resizing it so much that there's just a ton of slop in there that you won't ever really
Yeah.
feel. But
Yeah.
there's tools that you use to measure it to see how much it's doing. And if you push that shoulder back too far, like you resize it too far, what happens is you're going to end up just losing a lot of brass life because you're
Mhm.
just stressing the brass more every time you fire it. So ideally, you're just resizing it just enough to chamber reliably. And I'm just talking bolt gun precision
Yeah.
stuff. For gas
Yeah.
gun, there's a general rule of thumb where you want like 5 thousandths inch uh, shoulder bump. So that way, again, when there's grit and carbon and it's dirty and you're
Right.
relying on that one buffer spring to load your round for you
Yeah.
rather than your arm,
Yeah.
it's more likely to not give you issues.
Now, do you go through a annealing process as well, where you kind of heat up the brass and
Yeah,
anneal it
yeah. I actually
to before you reload it?
have a very messy bench, but
No, that's fine.
I I use, let's see here. It's called
Oh
anneal
yeah,
ease, not to be confused with anal ease, but yeah. So basically, you can kind of see there's a
yeah,
case in there. There's a nozzle. It's hooked up to propane. It heats it up. It spins. Um, it's real fun to watch. You can Google annealing
yeah.
machine, and there's all kinds of people that have like made up their own. There's like a freaking $1,500 one called the Amp that uses combustion, or I don't think that's the right word. Uses like a electrical element instead of propane.
Okay. Yeah, there's
So
people that even like there was a guy, so the where that comes to mind today in the office at work, I went into one of the guys' offices just to BS with him and I was like, "Man, it smells like varnish in here. What's going on?" And he was like, "Oh, I built an annealer and I brought it in to show one of the other." So he built a wooden wooden annealer, but it's very similar to what you were showing just there. Has a nozzle attached to it, and he was, I mean, it looked nice.
yeah,
But yeah, people that get into this hobby, they really get into the hobby.
yeah. And just for any of your viewers that aren't into this stuff, I think a really easy way to explain annealing is like if you have a piece of metal and you bend it back and forth enough times, eventually it's going to get brittle and snap and
Hmm.
break. But you think of like, depending on that metal type or whatever, you can do that a couple times before it starts to get to that point where it's going to crack. Well, if you were to heat that up with a blowtorch and get it hot and like cool down again, it's going to kind of reset its properties, and you're going to be able to do that again. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're annealing. Is you're literally like rearranging those molecules in there with heat, so that way, you know, when you're shooting it in your chamber and that shoulder is expanding, and then you're resizing it and putting it back where you want it, it's preventing it from getting brittle. And then
Yeah.
when you're trying to, get all Matt's ass accurate about everything, then you can anneal every time if you want to. That way, it's consistent from every shot. I only anneal like once every three firings at the most. Um, I used to not have an annealing machine, but my buddy did, so I would only anneal like every 6 or 7 times, or whenever he was free for me to drop by with a 6 pack and run
Yeah.
my brass through his annealer. So, and I did just fine. Like, it's not something that I think you have to get real concerned about, but it is kind of a nice peace of mind, especially if you don't do a good job of tracking how many firings each piece of brass has, and you
Hmm.
kind of want to just like reset your entire lot of brass to
Yeah.
be all consistent and have that same hardness. Annealing is a good way to kind of do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's not that I usually I'm big on inspecting it, so I'll inspect my brass and I don't have precision. It's not I shoot a lot of my reload stuff is just for the range. So I'll clean my brass and then pull it out and inspect it. If it looks bad, it gets tossed, but if it looks fine, then it gets put back into the mix for my next range trip.
Yeah.
Um, so I like that idea of if I were to start loading precision, like I have a 308 now, or excuse me, a 30-06 bolt gun that I want to start reloading hunting rounds for. And that was something that a buddy just gave me like a bag of 30-06 ammo. Don't know anything about it. Know what what grain, what type of powders in it. So is like
Is his name Bubba?
no, no, it was Um, some old timer. I don't even. They're not reloads. Like well, from what
Oh,
he told
okay.
me,
Yeah, I was gonna
it
say
was it was
beware of Bubba's pissing hot hand loads.
no, no, no. Yeah, from what he told me, it was like store bought ammo, but he just like dumped it into a bag and he had it stored that way for years, and then sold his gun. And he's like, "Oh, I have some 30-06 ammo." I'm like, "Oh, what kind is it?" I don't know, like Acu Bond stuff, maybe.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, what do I do? Do I just pull everything and like weigh all the bullets and figure out? There's no way that you, if it is factory ammo, like good luck trying to find out what powder they used, 20 years ago. I'm sure people could tell me, but it's just
Even
a lot of
even in
work. I'd
today's day
rather
and age,
just,
like they the factory ammo is some kind of weird proprietary blend that like
yeah,
is made to work on their machines, and a lot of times they'll do volume charging instead of by weight because it's faster, and so they'll use the ball powder instead of the stick. So
right.
if it were me, man, I would just sit there and divide it all up to figure out, do
By
you even
head
have
stamp
a
and all that stuff.
full 20 rounds of all of the same,
Yeah.
bullet and manufacturer to make it worth your while to see if any one of them shoots better than the others.
Yeah.
And for hunting, I think 20 rounds would be plenty because
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it's hunting. You just need to sight in the rifle, gain a little
Yep.
confidence that it's going to put the bullet where you intend, and then hopefully it's a decent bullet. That Nosler AccuBond, that's a good bullet for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I hunt with the 30-06, and I'm hoping to shoot a deer this weekend actually. And my hunting load is a 150 grain SST from Hornady, and that has
Okay.
been trying to shoot. I think I bought a box of 100 of those when I first started reloading, and that box is still about half full because you just don't shoot that many of them. You
Right.
find your load and stick to it,
Yeah.
especially for deer. I don't like to. I have always wanted to try to like snipe a deer from like 800 yards just to say I did, but
Yeah.
whenever I actually get out there and start hunting, I always want to. I get in that hunting mentality where I'm like, I'm gonna try and sneak up on this deer and get close and just like make a really good shot on him, so I don't have to freaking track him.
Right. Yeah.
I made that mistake too many times as a teenager where you freaking
And
make a
you're
bad
hoofing it
shot on a
for,
deer and lose
yeah,
it, God forbid, or have to track it and
totally.
it ends up in somebody else's land. It's just a pain in the butt. So
So what got you then? You were talking about like you hunted as a kid, or you've kind of been around firearms for a long time. But what got you into the reloading? Was it PRS that got you into reloading?
no, I actually was into reloading before PRS.
Oh, okay.
My dad reloaded, and so that was kind of a thing where I just kind of got into it when I was doing like free gun and whatnot as a way to save money and as a hobby.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable for me. And then, but that was something that definitely kind of helped draw me towards PRS was the idea of like reload my own ammo for that and, you know, figuring all that out. And it's been a journey, man. There's a lot to figure out when it comes to like precision reloading. At least 10 years ago there was. I think nowadays, like, there's cartridges out there like as long as you buy reputable components and
Yeah.
like you can use a. I'm not advocating you to like go out and Google and use some Facebook dude's reloading recipe, but use the book, but also pay attention to what people are going. What is their go-to load?
Yeah.
The like your 308, like dude, 168 grain bullet with Varget powder and a 308, like that has been so tried and tested that if that doesn't shoot in your gun, like drop the gun
Something's
off at
wrong.
the pawn shop and start over. Like
Right.
there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. 168 grain are actually they're in my cart right now. Some
Nice.
like 150 grain. I forgot what the 150 grain were, but some like 150 grain FMGs, sorry, FMJs, and then the 168 grain. Um, yeah, it's just like, oh man, when do I buy this? Do I buy
Yeah.
it now? It's that's always the question that I have. Like, when should I have done it? And it's always I should do it right now. I have so many other projects that like, oh, I'll get to that eventually. And then eventually it comes around, it's like, oh, everything's sold out. Now I got to wait a year and a half until I find it in stock again.
Yeah. If you think you're gonna get bit by the precision bug, then I would definitely steer you towards the like 168 grain boat tail hollow point because
150 grain FMJ. That's just like for plinking ammo and making noise,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which is cool if you're into that thing. But like I got to the point now where it's like if I'm not able to ring steel at a long ways away with it, like it just doesn't interest me.
Right. Yeah, and it's for me. This is I haven't even shot this AR-10 yet. So that's the idea of the 150 grain was just just ammo to zero the optic,
Yeah,
just to get on paper, and then once I know that my optic is good, then okay, let's start figuring out a load that this gun likes. But I bought some, man, I they're they're in the box in the garage. I forgot what it was, but some ammo that already had 168 grain in it. Now it's gonna drive me nuts.
yeah, yeah, dude.
Um,
Like if you're doing things right, you really are only gonna use like 4 or 5 bullets to get your scope zero.
it was
So
the Sierra Match King.
yep, yep. That is the tried and true bullet I was talking about. The
Yeah.
168 grain hotel hull point with
Yeah.
Varga. Like that's the one. So
Yeah. So that's what I have. I think I have 40 rounds of that I bought, maybe 60. Um, so that Friday, my plan is heading out and yeah, 3 round. If I'm big on if I can't get it on paper in 3 rounds, I'm doing something wrong.
yeah.
I'm hopeful that the local range is not going to be crazy because Friday is, observed Veterans Day. For those of you that are going to be watching this, you're going to be watching this well after we're done recording. But as of today, Friday will be Veterans Day. So fingers crossed that it's not just chocked full of I hate people.
Oh yeah. Well, dude,
So
right before deer season, like it's gonna be just freaking packed with everybody trying to sight their shit in, and
yeah,
90% of them aren't even gonna know what they're doing, and there's gonna be a bunch of buds that are all pissed off because their rifle doesn't
yeah,
shoot right, their scope isn't even on. Don't get me started on fuds at the range, man. I've
I
had my
know.
share of run-ins.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that the guy that I was telling you about that he brought the annealer to the office today. He's actually an RSO at the range, and so the way that they do it out there, if you're a range safety officer, you have to like you they force you to volunteer to be an RSO. Certain like you basically pick on the calendar what days you want to be range safety officer. So he always picks holidays because he knows not a lot of people are going to be there. But he picked Veterans Day, and I was like, dude, Veterans Day it's probably going to be pretty busy. Um, but there's times where he'll be like, "Hey, dude, come on out." They have one range. I forgot they call it, but it's like the range that they'll take the Boy Scouts out to teach them how to shoot 22s. But it goes out to I think it goes out to 200 yards, and they keep it closed unless the Boy Scouts are out there or if one of the members wants to use our range. So I just go out with him. There's no one else on the range, and we you know have at it whenever we want, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I started doing when I'm sighting a new rifle, like people spend all this time like bore sighting and doing all this
Mhm.
stuff, use lasers and shit, and then they'll go and shoot on paper at like 20 yards and then back up gradually. If you just find a nice big berm at 100
Mhm.
yards, turn the magnification on your scope all the way down, and especially if you're using a scope that's got a reticle that matches your turrets, you just fire one shot and watch where that sucker hits. It's going to make a big cloud of dirt, of dust, and then adjust your scope accordingly using your reticle as a little ruler. And after that one shot, you ought to be on paper then.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that's been
great
my
idea.
that's been my go-to. I got to credit my engineering buddy again for that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
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 because what I do typically, I mean, I shoot a lot of gas guns. I have the one bolt gun, but like with my 30-06, what I did is I pulled the whole bolt out and I had it on sandbags, and I just kind of looked through until I saw my target.
yep,
Okay, like that's going to get me on paper probably, and then where does the scope line up? All right, let's get the scope to be center of the target, barrels in the center of the target, bolt back in, shoot, and then adjust from there where I need to. Like it'll get
yep,
me on paper at least. But I love that because my my issue right now, I don't have a spotting scope anymore. Um, I really just need to break down and just get some cheapo one to at least let me see from 100 yards. But I hate the idea of going out there and shooting and then having to wait for everybody on the line to finish shooting for me to then, go down and check the target. Ugh, frustrating, but that's personal
What kind
problem,
of
I guess.
scope do you have on there?
So it's a new. I don't know if it's a new one from Athlon, but Athlon, it's a fixed 10x that
Okay,
they're. I'm curious how it's going to work out. Uh, so sorry, that's what's going on there that I need to zero. What's on there currently is a primary arms 2.5 to 10 power
okay,
on the AR-10.
nice. Yeah,
On the 30-06, it's a ride on optics. I It's been so long. I think it's a 3 to 9 power. It might be a 4 to 12 power though,
gotcha.
but just a very super basic crosshairs. The it's a Weatherby
Oh, nice.
Vanguard 2 that I got at a pawn shop for like $300. I'm not going to throw $1,000 piece of glass on it. I want it to be banged up, and I take it out hunting, and
Yep.
I don't really I don't really care about the optic too much. I just want it to be accurate.
Yeah.
So, well, man, I don't know. I don't know too much more of what to ask you or talk about. I'm excited that I had an opportunity to get you on and learn a little bit more about PRS and reloading. I do have one other question that I'd like to ask, I guess, before we close up here. Um, if you if you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
Eagle, for sure. Like, I've always had a spot in my heart for birds of prey. I just think they're so badass. Like, when you're out there, whether it's just hunting, going for a hike, just out there in the woods, and you hear that like screech,
Oh yeah.
like I get tingles, man. And just have the ability to fly. Like, who doesn't want that? Like, and man, they make it look good. So I would definitely be an eagle or some kind of bird of prey if I could choose. Yeah. What about you?
Um, man, I think what would I be? I don't know. You turn it around on me. I wasn't prepared for that. Um, I think I would. I'm kind of in the groove of orcas lately, like killer
Oh, cool.
whales,
Yeah.
and I think I hate the fact that they're like that's kind of what you see or what yeah I guess like what you see at SeaWorld and things like that. I hate the idea of them being held captive. They're kind of the bullies of the ocean, but I feel like they're underrated. Like people don't really think about them very much, but they're just kind of mean pricks. Like I envision an orca kind of like the old man telling people to get off his lawn.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe next week I might change my mind, but right now I'm going to say orca.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one. That's unique. Like, I, if you were
Yeah,
to
that's
poll the
that's me.
entire world, like, I don't think you'd have a whole lot of people say orca.
Yeah, I know. Awesome, man. Well, hey, CCW, I appreciate you taking some time to hang out with me and to answer some questions, learn a little bit more about you and kind of what your passions are. I'm gonna end this, but stick around. We can hang out in the green room for a bit.
Well, cool, man. And hey, real quick, like, I just joined your Discord, and if any of your followers have any kind of like reloading questions or want to ask about PRS or anything, please hit me up. I'd be happy to. As y'all have seen today, I love talking about this stuff. So thanks for
Yeah,
having
and
me, Jason. It's been awesome, dude.
yeah, one last thing. I don't know if you have social media that you want people to follow you at. You could definitely do self promote if you'd like to do that. If you're not on social media, no issues.
I got nothing like that. I just enjoy watching you guys.
All right, brother. Well, hey, everyone that's watching, listening, appreciate you joining in for another episode of Everyman's Arsenal. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.